Welcome to our presentation on the visual analysis of displacement processes in porous media using spatio-temporal flow graphs. Typically, domain scientists look at the raw data from experiments by animating the recorded image time series and gain information about the porous domain by extracting the pore network graph. However, this graph, a node link diagram, only contains information about the solid structure of the porous medium. To provide them with more details, Frey et al. Introduced visualizations for the flow, mapping information to the graph. Contrary, we present an approach that is agnostic to the solid structure and extract a graph that represents the flow. To this end, we first condense the time series into a single image that contains all time information. We then extract a graph that follows the flow. As this does not explicitly depend on the solid structure, we do not need a definition of a pore, which generally does not exist. To then only reflect the topology of the flow, the graph is simplified, and depending on the flow analysis task, different graph layouts are applied. The data used in our work stem from experiments and were captured by a camera, which provides us with an input grayscale image series. In these images, the domain border, as well as the geometry of the solids, is recorded as dark outline. The fluid that is already in the pore space of the material, often air, is bright and is called the defending fluid. In the course of the experiments, the invading fluid is pumped into the porous medium, which is depicted as dark gray area. Because the data from our domain scientists all stem from experiments that are capillarity driven, we can assume that areas that are filled by the invading fluid stay filled. This is a necessary prerequisite for our time map approach, where we create a single image with a single time value per pixel, which otherwise would not be possible. To create the time map, every pixel is assigned a value: 0 if it is a solid structure which is present in the first image, t if it is filled by the invading fluid in time step t, and infinity if the defending fluid prevails. For visualization, we can simply apply a color map to see the progression of the invading fluid over time. However, if we apply a periodic color map, we can better observe local details. The frequency of the color can then also be directly interpreted in a way that low frequency equals high velocity and vice versa. To generate the graph as an abstraction of the flow from this intermediate representation, we apply a flood fill algorithm to the time map. This provides us with separate regions that we call flow fronts, and each flow front is assigned a node. Edges are then created between adjacent fronts, but for a node time at t only if it has a neighboring node with lower time value, which is, at the same time, a local maximum lower than t. This leads to merges in the graph if the fluid fingers reach a certain point at the same time, or to a dead end if one finger arrives late. The created graph can become quite large, depending on the number of input images. As nodes that only have one incoming and outgoing edge, colored in white, do not provide information about the topology of the flow, the idea is to reduce these nodes to a single one conveying transport information. To only provide topological information, these nodes are removed. The result is a displacement graph that can be visualized individually. Here we map color to time, node position to the centers of mass of the flow fronts, node size to flow front area, and edge width to flow velocity. Depending on the task, other mappings and layouts can be applied. For example, to investigate the breakthrough, that is, the event where inlet and outlet of the porous domain are connected by the flow, we want to highlight the main channel. To further investigate the diffusion of surfactants or other materials in the flow, relevant for the application of the porous medium as a filter, we want to have a look at the branching of the main channel. For this, an alternative layout is applied, which fixes the nodes of the main channel on a horizontal line, while keeping their relative distances. All other nodes are rearranged by applying a force-based algorithm. Additionally, nodes are colored to highlight the number of outgoing edges. We call this a breakthrough graph, and with it, the main channel and branching can be quickly analyzed. Our domain scientists are further interested in the metrics of the displacement process, which we store at graph nodes and edges. These entail the newly covered area, the number of incoming and outgoing edges, fluid-fluid and fluid-solid interface lengths, and velocity magnitude. These metrics are then visualized in our interactive tool. Here, as an example, the fluid-fluid interface length is shown as a stacked bar chart. The current time step is highlighted in the metric view by a black bar in the background. The graph itself is visualized with randomly colored nodes, whose colors relate to the colors of the stacked bar chart. In the background behind the graph, the original input image of the selected timestamp is shown. This tool provides many more options for interactive analysis, such as coloring nodes according to their number of incoming and outgoing edges, applying different graph layouts, switching between metrics, and scrolling through time. For more details, please see our supplemental video. For the analysis of the experiments, we employ our interactive tool, the time map, and the visualizations of our graphs. One application case is the analysis of the Haynes jump. This is a phenomenon where a pore is rapidly filled by the invading fluid after an initially very slow progression. This can be directly identified from the frequencies in the time map for multiple regions. If we compare this dataset with octagonal solids 2-1 with round geometry, we can see that the Haynes jump is much more prominent in the octagonal case. This is because the Haynes jump depends heavily on the geometry of the porous medium as the fluid gets stuck at edges. This can also be seen in the graph, where the fluid behaves differently when filling the pore throats. While this phenomenon is well known, our visualizations allow the domain experts to quickly identify and observe the Haynes jumps. To investigate the breakthrough, we again use the alternative layout for our breakthrough graph. Of general interest is the amount of fluid that participates in the breakthrough. This can be partially answered by looking at the main channel and how much branching it exhibits. In this case, the round geometry has more branches, which indicates that more surfactants within the fluid would remain in the porous medium, making it a potentially better filter. To conclude, we introduced new visualizations for the analysis of capillarity-driven displacement processes in porous media. For that, we create a time map visualization with a periodic color map, extract the displacement and breakthrough graphs, and provide an interactive tool for visual analysis. We then showcase two examples where our domain scientists gained insight: the Haynes jump and diffusion processes. Currently, our approach is limited to capillarity-driven flow. As future work, it would be interesting to compare simulation and experiment through comparative graph visualization. Further, we would like to employ graph metrics for the analysis of larger flow graphs and allow the user to work more interactively with the graphs. This could be achieved by providing a level of detail approach or by clustering graph metrics for multiple ensemble runs. During the development, we noticed some resemblance with REP graphs, and a comparison between our graphs and REP graphs could be of interest. Finally, an extension to 3D would allow to analyze a wider set of experiments, for example from 3-dimensional micro-CT. This work has been a close cooperation between visualization researchers from the University of Stuttgart and the University of Groningen and domain experts at the University of Stuttgart. Finally, we want to thank the German Research Foundation for funding the Collaborative Research Center SFB 1313 on porous media and the Cluster of Excellence EXC 2075 SimTech.